Have you ever been overlooked, underestimated, or told that your dreams were too big? Ava Mitchell's story is a testament to the power of believing in yourself, even when the world doesn't see you. What if the moment you step out of the shadows, the world finally notices? The studio was alive with chaos. Lighting rigs buzzing overhead, stylists sprinting with garment bags, makeup artists dabbing sweat off models' brows. In the middle of it all stood Ava Mitchell, clipboard clutched tightly to her chest, her custom sketchbook hidden beneath it like a secret diary. She was 26, quiet but observant, wearing thrifted flats and a blazer 3 sizes too big. No one remembered her name, but she remembered every seam, every shade, every suggestion she whispered that got reused without credit. The head designer, Marcel Viero, strutted onto the set wearing sunglasses indoors. "All right, people," he shouted. "I want brilliance, not boredom. Let's show the world what couture still means." He snapped his fingers and pointed toward the rack. "Where's that asymmetrical crimson silk number I sketched?" Ava didn't flinch. It was her design. She knew every fold, every layer of that gown, because she had sewn it herself after Marcel dismissed the concept as too cultural last month. Now it was his new masterpiece. As the model posed under blinding lights, the photographer beckoned. "Can I get the whole team in one behind-the-scenes shot?" Assistants shuffled in awkwardly, grinning nervously. Ava stepped forward instinctively. This was her moment too. "Not you," Marcel said sharply, not even turning to look at her. "You're just an assistant. Stay out of the shot." The words didn't sting at first. They floated past her like lint. But as the others gathered around the model, laughing, clapping, taking selfies with the gown she designed, Ava took a step back. Then another, until the lights no longer touched her. No one noticed her leave the frame. She returned to her corner of the studio where garment bags were slung like afterthoughts and pins littered the floor. There she sat in silence, pulling out her sketchbook. Page after page bloomed with color, designs that told stories of ancestry, resilience, and grace. Gowns that breathed with heritage, not trends. She looked up once, toward the spotlight. It didn't call to her, not yet, but something stirred inside her, something sharper than shame, louder than rejection. She didn't belong in the background, not forever. And deep down, a voice whispered the truth she'd buried too long. "They'll remember my name. One day they'll all remember." Ava Mitchell's apartment was the size of a well-lit closet, with peeling paint and a heater that groaned like a bitter old man. But to her, it was a sanctuary, the only place where she could exist on her own terms, not as Marcel's assistant, but as an artist. That night after the shoot, she dropped her bag at the door and didn't even bother to change out of her blazer. The echo of Marcel's voice still rang in her head. "You're just an assistant." The words clung to her like static. She turned on her favorite Nina Simone record and let the room fill with the voice of defiance. It helped her breathe. From beneath her bed, she pulled out the weathered leather case, her true portfolio. Not the watered-down sketches she kept on her work tablet, but the soul-stained pages she'd drawn since she was 15. Designs no one else had seen. She flipped through them slowly. Hand-stitched hems, experimental silhouettes, traditional West African motifs woven into futuristic cuts. They weren't trendy, they were timeless. And then she stopped. One page, folded neatly in the back, a single design she never dared to show. The one she'd dreamed about since the day her grandmother passed. An ode to the woman who taught her to sew, using scraps from church dresses and Sunday hats. The gown was a masterstroke, floor-length with a structured bodice made to mimic ancestral armor, layered with sheer panels dyed in deep indigo and sunset gold. The neckline bloomed like a lotus. At its heart, beadwork hand-drawn to tell a story of migration, memory, and becoming. Ava had poured herself into it, but it felt too sacred for a world that preferred flash over meaning. She traced the lines with her fingertip, as if afraid it might vanish. "They wouldn't get it," she whispered aloud. But a small voice inside her asked, "What if one person does?" She rose from the floor, set the sketch on her wall, and stared at it until the sun crept through the blinds. She didn't know when or how, but something told her. This gown would be seen, not by everyone, just the right someone, and that would be enough to set everything in motion. Ava was still in her work clothes when she finally dozed off. Head against the armrest, sketch pinned to the wall above her, Nina Simone crackling softly in the background, like a lullaby for the weary. She hadn't meant to fall asleep, but the weight of the day, the insult, the silence, the ache of being invisible, had wrapped around her like a heavy coat. She didn't hear her phone buzz the first time, or the second, but on the third vibration, it skidded off the table and clattered to the hardwood floor, jolting her awake. She blinked, disoriented, then reached for it groggily. 1:42 a.m., unknown number. She almost ignored it, probably a wrong number or a scam text, but something made her tap it open. Hey, this is Yara Bennett. Hope I've got the right Ava. Saw your sketch. I don't know how I found it. Someone left it in the back of Marcel's lookbook, but I can't stop thinking about it. Are you available for the Met Gala? I want you to design something just like that. Something honest. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Yara Bennett, the Yara, model, activist, style renegade, Vogue's cover girl last spring. The woman who once wore a dress made of recycled protest posters and turned it into a political statement seen around the world. She reread the message 3 times, each word hitting harder than the last. Saw your sketch? Which one? Her heart leapt. The gown? The one she thought would never see daylight? She scrambled to her feet, pacing her tiny apartment in wide-eyed silence, phone trembling in her hand. No designer got a shot like this, let alone an assistant no one saw coming, and certainly not in the middle of the night, from a woman who could choose anyone. Ava hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. What if this was a mistake? A joke? Or worse, what if she wasn't ready? She looked up at the sketch taped to the wall, haloed in moonlight. Maybe she wasn't ready, but the world clearly was. She typed one line and hit send before she could second-guess it. Yes, let's make history. Then she sat down at her sewing machine, cracked her knuckles, and whispered to herself, all right, Ava, no turning back now. Ava had 10 days, not 10 business days, 10 real days, 10 sleepless, gut-checking, soul-wringing days between that 2 a.m. text and the red carpet of the most-watched fashion event in the world. There was no studio team, no interns, no stylist army hovering with garment steamers and sewing kits. Just Ava, a rusting Singer sewing machine, a Brooklyn apartment with radiators that hissed like dragons, and a budget that couldn't stretch much further than a Metro card and a few yards of discount fabric. But where some saw limits, Ava saw canvas. She started by clearing the living room entirely. The futon went upright against the wall. The coffee table got dragged into the hallway. Rolls of muslin replaced her throw pillows. She pinned sketches to every corner of the apartment, creating a design cocoon. Her grandmother's old shears, still sharp, sat beside a mason jar of beads from Ghana her aunt had sent years ago. On day 2, she hand-dyed silks in her bathtub, barefoot in gloves, swirling golden saffron and obsidian ink under the kitchen's flickering bulb. On day 3, she bartered sketches for specialty fabric from a boutique owner who whispered, "This looks like the kind of dress that could change your life." By day 5, her hands were raw, tiny pricks from needles, hot glue burns, pin marks up and down her wrists. But her eyes were alive. The gown was taking shape. The armor-like bodice held strength in every seam. The layered skirt moved like a river, flowing with memory. Each bead she stitched told a story: migration, resistance, rebirth. Her mother came by on day 6 and gasped at the vision overtaking the apartment. She didn't say much, just kissed Ava's forehead, ran her fingers along the hem of the half-finished train, and whispered a prayer in Twi. This dress, she said, has ancestors in its bones. By day 9, the entire gown was complete, except the neckline. Ava stared at the final blank space like an author confronting the last sentence of a novel. It had to mean something. It had to say something. She reached into her grandmother's old sewing kit and pulled out a single gold cowrie shell. She sewed it right at the center of the collar, deliberate, unapologetic. When she stepped back, she whispered, "Now it's ready." The Met Gala was always a spectacle. Diamonds borrowed, gowns flown in from Milan, velvet ropes guarding legacy. But this year it felt different. The theme, Echoes of the Diaspora, a tribute to global Black brilliance in art, fashion, and story. The press circled like hawks, cameras clicking before heels even hit carpet. And then Yara Bennett arrived. But it wasn't just her entrance. It was the stillness that followed, the way conversations fell mid-sentence, the hush that rolled across the plaza like a reverent breeze. She stood there at the top of the stairs, not posing, not smiling. She was still, regal, unbothered, and the gown, Ava's gown, spoke volumes. It shimmered under the spotlights like something born of earth and stardust. The structured bodice gleamed with hand-stitched strength, corseted like armor, yet soft as memory. The skirt flowed behind her in layered silk organza, sunset gold fading into ancestral indigo, each step writing poetry into the marble beneath her. But it was the details that stunned the crowd into silence, beadwork forming constellations that told an unspoken history, a neckline crowned with a single gold cowrie shell, radiant, defiant, and stitched into the lining, invisible unless you knew to look, was a phrase in shimmering thread. We were never background. Photographers fumbled, stylists gasped. Anna Winter squinted from behind her sunglasses. And then, like a lightning strike, Vogue's editor-in-chief turned to her assistant and said one word. Who? Not who is she? Everyone knew Yara. Who made that? Suddenly, every eye turned toward the woman just beyond the rope, standing behind the crowd, unnoticed, until now. Ava Mitchell. No red carpet pass, no press badge, just a long black coat, ink-stained fingers, and eyes locked on her creation. Yara caught her gaze. She didn't wave, she didn't smile. She bowed her head just slightly, acknowledging the architect of the moment. Ava felt the weight of it, years of being invisible, dismissed, erased. All of it melting under the heat of a single truth now echoing across social feeds, fashion blogs, and whispered conversations. Who is Ava Mitchell? And more importantly, where has she been hiding? By the time Ava reached the subway platform that night, her phone was melting with notifications. Texts from old classmates, emails from people who once ghosted her, missed calls from stylists she had only seen in magazine mastheads. Her inbox read like a who's who of fashion media, all echoing the same desperate question. Can we talk? But it was the subject line from Vogue that made her hand tremble. Who is Ava Mitchell, the name behind the gown of the century? Her head spun. She had come to the Met Gala with no invitation, no press pass, no expectations, just quiet resolve and a coat full of pins in case the gown needed last-minute tailoring. Now she was being hunted by the same industry that once erased her from photo shoots and cut her name from credits. By morning, headlines blazed across every fashion site. The unknown genius who outshone every designer at the Met. Ava Mitchell, the future of couture has arrived. From assistant to icon. Marcel Viero, her old boss, posted a cryptic Instagram story featuring an old photo of Yara in his showroom with the caption, "Grateful to have helped shape tonight's moment." But the comments section turned vicious fast. Bro, you didn't even design it. Ava deserves the credit. She was more than just an assistant. You just didn't see her. And then came the moment Ava didn't expect. She was sitting at her kitchen table, a mug of untouched tea in her hands, when her phone rang with a video call request from Yara. She answered. Yara's face lit up the screen. You good? She asked softly. Ava nodded, unable to find the words. I told them no interviews unless they name you first, Yara said. This wasn't about wearing a dress. This was about correcting a narrative. You stitched a lineage into that gown. I just carried it. Ava blinked back tears. You changed something last night, Yara continued. Don't shrink now. They'll come calling. And when they do, make sure they say your name right. Ava smiled, small but certain. I will. And as she hung up the call, she glanced again at her sketchbook. No longer hidden under the bed, but now open on the table, each page an open door. They were no longer asking, "Who is Ava Mitchell?" Now they were asking, "What will she do next?" The call from the Smithsonian came just days after the Met Gala. Ava had already been bombarded by fashion houses, press inquiries, and agent offers. But nothing prepared her for the moment when a private number flashed across her screen, followed by the deep, deliberate voice of a curator who introduced themselves as part of the museum's Fashion and Culture Preservation Department. "We'd like to make a proposal," the curator began. "We've been following your work for years, but we're especially captivated by your gown, the one worn by Yara Bennett at the Met Gala. We believe it's not only a historical statement in fashion, but a cultural artifact." Ava's heart skipped. Cultural artifact? "Yes, we'd like to include it in our collection, alongside some of the most defining pieces in fashion history. Your gown," the curator continued, "is more than just a garment. It represents the resurgence of Black excellence, heritage, and artistry in ways that have never been seen before." The curator's words echoed through her head as she stared at her phone. A museum, the Smithsonian. She had dreamed of her designs being displayed for the world. But this was unimaginable. "Let me think about it," Ava managed to say, though her voice wavered with disbelief. "We'll give you all the time you need," the curator replied. "But please know, our collection is reserved for the pieces that will define the next century, and your work is undoubtedly one of them." After hanging up, Ava sat quietly, staring at the empty space in her apartment, where her sewing machine once sat, now tucked away in the corner of the room. The same hands that had pieced together this masterpiece, hands that had been dismissed, overlooked, and forgotten, had created something that would now be preserved for generations. The story was no longer just hers. It was bigger now, woven into the very fabric of history. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, press releases, and interviews. Ava's name became synonymous with innovation, integrity, and authenticity in fashion. But even amid the frenzy, she kept returning to that quiet moment when she first heard the curator's voice. Cultural artifact. She didn't need validation. Not anymore. She had something far greater. Purpose. And now the Smithsonian would carry her legacy and the gowns forever. It had been 6 months since Ava Mitchell's gown was inducted into the Smithsonian. 6 months since her world was turned upside down by a phone call, a sketchbook, and a single moment of believing in herself. But as the museum's gala event approached, celebrating the new collection that included her gown, Ava stood at the edge of the red carpet once again. Only this time, she wasn't in the background, and she wasn't holding a clipboard. She was the one people were looking at, the one people were talking about. The evening sky was warm, and Ava adjusted the sleek black dress she had designed herself for the occasion. It was simple, minimalist, like the beginning of something new. But it was also all her. No excess, no distractions, just her. A black SUV pulled up, and the doors opened to a flash of cameras. Yara Bennett stepped out, the very woman who had put her designs on the map, wearing a custom piece by Ava. The world watched as they walked toward the museum's entrance, side by side. They were no longer just an iconic duo on the red carpet. They were a symbol of defiance, of what happens when talent refuses to be overlooked, when the underdog doesn't stay in the shadows for long. Inside the museum, as Ava walked past her own gown, preserved under glass, encased in its own spotlight, she was struck by how far she had come. The bright lights of the press were replaced by the soft, reverent hum of a space that felt like home, like a moment carved into eternity. But as she took in the breathtaking surroundings, her mind wandered to the next steps, the next designs. There was still more to say, more stories to stitch into fabric. She had a world to change, and the tools to do it. Someone tapped her shoulder. "Are you Ava Mitchell?" a voice asked. She turned to see a young woman, barely out of her teens, eyes wide with awe. I just wanted to say thank you. Your gown, It inspired me to start sketching again. I've never seen someone like me represented like that before. Ava smiled, the warmth reaching her eyes. This was why she had never given up. Not for the awards, not for the recognition, but for moments like this. Thank you, she said softly, and keep going. Never let anyone tell you you're not enough. The young woman nodded, her smile radiant. As Ava watched her walk away, she felt something shift. The cycle was complete. She had gone from being invisible, from being dismissed, to inspiring others to take their own place in history. And this was just the beginning. The story of Ava Mitchell was no longer a whisper, it was a roar. As Ava Mitchell's gown now graces the Smithsonian, it's more than just fabric and thread. It's a symbol of resilience, a legacy of defiance, and a testament to the power of never giving up. From the margins to the museum, she showed the world. Your voice, your vision, matters.